Hello and welcome. Come in, come in, come in, come in. Today we're going to talk about critical criminology. Let's get started.
Critical theories have their roots in Marxism, feminism, postmodernism, and post-structuralism. They examine issues of deviance and crime from a perspective that questions the normative and status quo. Like Marxist criminology, critical criminology asks, what role does society play in creating deviant or criminal behaviors and people? Critical criminology doesn't seek to define what crime is, but to examine the social and economic context of criminality, as well as society's response to criminality. Many theories are housed under the umbrella of critical criminology, including feminist criminology, peacemaking criminology, abolitionist criminology, and critical race criminology, among others. Today, we're going to focus on an overview of critical criminology and the features that distinguish critical criminology from other criminological perspectives. Even though many theories are housed under the umbrella of critical criminology, they all emphasize addressing power differentials, hierarchies, and inequalities as explanation of crime. Power differentials, hierarchies, and inequalities affect the distribution of crime over time and place. They influence the definitions of crime and justice and the processes of doing justice, including making and enforcing laws. These power differentials also shape intermediary cultures and their relations to crime and justice. Many of the theories within critical criminology promote establishing greater economic, social, and political equity to reduce crime and to reduce the inequalities in creating and enforcing the law. Some of these theories recommend empowering victims and marginalized groups. This commitment to the powerless and marginalized is a very different approach to crime and justice than traditional criminologies. Mainstream criminology is not about challenging power and authority. It's mostly about determining the causes of crime as defined by the state and relying on positivist methods. That is, traditional criminology categorizes, identifies, and analyzes various characteristics of crime, criminals, and criminality. Traditional criminology frequently looks at the law, psychiatry, and medicine as if they reveal some kind of underlying truth about deviance, not in the way that law, psychiatry, or medicine create and define categories of deviance. Much of traditional criminology is about shaping and reforming the criminal justice system without questioning the criminal justice system itself. Critical criminology, on the other hand, explicitly challenges the taken-for-granted definitions of crime and deviance. Critical criminology is suspicious of official crime statistics, and overall, it questions the authority and universality of traditional analyses of criminality. At its core, critical criminology is about critical thinking. It's about questioning what we take for granted as true. Being critical means being curious, questioning the beliefs built into the everyday operations of the criminal justice system, and being prepared to challenge the underlying assumptions and commonly accepted rationales of law and justice. Critical criminology asks questions such as, what are we missing by defining crime the way we do? How do the systems of justice, including law and the courts, police, and prisons, operate in reality? Why do we punish wrongdoing the way we do? And how would different types of punishments contribute to levels of criminality and social cohesion? Instead of representing and defending institutions of criminal justice, critical criminologists represent the marginalized and economically disadvantaged, the powerless segments of society. Themes of social inclusion, equality, and human rights feature prominently in critical criminology. Critical criminology is also informed by postmodernism. Postmodernism is generally concerned with how language masks power relations. Using a technique to critically analyze language called deconstructionism, postmodernist criminologists ask why some acts are defined as crimes while others are not, and why some people are considered criminals and others are not. Postmodern criminologists will analyze the language of the courts and the way legalese constrains and categorizes people and excludes many voices. So the law does not represent a diversity of voices. Instead, it creates hierarchies and rules that exclude people. Postmodernism is also very critical of sources of knowledge. Traditional criminology prioritizes the scientific method and empirical evidence. Postmodernism argues that no one perspective is better than another. So information or evidence gathered through the scientific method is not better or more true than evidence gathered through discourse analysis or the everyday observations of the average person. Like Marxist and conflict criminology, critical criminology looks at the unequal distribution of power and wealth as the driving force in inequalities in the criminal justice system. For example, in addition to highlighting the ways traditional criminology focuses on men's crime and criminality, feminist criminology looks at the consequences of the historical domination of women by men and questions why traditional criminology ignores or marginalizes the social impact of pornography, intimate partner violence, and other forms of women's victimization. Peacemaking criminology was developed in reaction to the quote-unquote war on crime waged primarily by U.S. Presidents Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush. The main focus of peacemaking criminologists is the criminal justice system and how it systematically creates two classes of people, criminals and non-criminals. Rather than expanding social control by increasing incarceration and having stronger punishments, social policy should help reduce crime peacefully. Peacemaking criminology believes that the criminal justice system treats people too harshly, but peacemaking criminology still thinks that offenders need to understand that what they did was wrong and that offenders need to take responsibility for their criminal actions. One way peacemaking criminologists propose this might happen is through restorative justice. Restorative justice is a process to resolve disputes between offenders and victims and to make offenders understand the harm they caused the victim. Frequently, this happens through informal meetings, sometimes called circles, with a mediator, the offender or offenders, and the victim or victims. The idea with this process is to demonstrate to the offender the damage they've done. At the same time, this process is meant to help provide closure for the victims. This form of punishment is less formal than incarceration, and the hope is that it drastically reduces the negative effects that being incarcerated often has on individuals. The next example is abolitionist criminology and the prison abolition movement. Abolitionist criminology argues that penal institutions should be done away with and replaced with more progressive means of rehabilitation and punishment, such as work within the community or restitution. Abolitionist criminologists argue that the criminal justice system as it is currently constructed is a social problem itself. Penal institutions do not help reduce crime, and in many cases, the brutality that occurs in prisons by guards and other prisoners can actually encourage more crime. Therefore, creating a criminal justice system that is more responsive to the needs of criminals and less punitive will reduce reoffending better than traditional incarceration-based strategies. A final example is critical race theory, which is based in legal analysis. This perspective argues that race is a social construct used to oppress and exploit people of color. Critical race theorists point out the ways that racism is built into the law and legal institutions, because law is used to maintain social, economic, and political inequalities between socially constructed races. So, the way we talk about crime, the way we understand motivations for criminal behavior, the beliefs we have about effective crime control methods, according to critical criminologists, are all constructed through the contexts of racism, sexism, classism, heterosexism, and so on. Critical criminologists argue that the inequities that are so pervasive in social life color the way we understand crime and justice. They analyze the criminal justice system, searching for how social inequalities manifest in the criminal justice system, in the processes and practices that construct, enforce, and implement laws. Critical criminologists will not evaluate the effectiveness of a particular law or provide evidence that a policy works. Instead, they will look at the hidden bias that created that law or policy instead of some other law or policy. They will seriously question the ideological and political foundations upon which crime is defined, enforced, processed, and responded to. The theories under the umbrella of critical criminology are a diverse and interconnected set of theories and methods that are all committed to an alternative approach to crime, justice, and even the discipline of criminology. These theories have pushed the boundaries of criminology to create new and innovative ways of understanding crime and justice.
Well, that's it. That's all I've got. I hope you learned a lot. I'll see you next time.